Good evening. I am Rick Wolfe, and I want to thank you for viewing this edition of Caretakers. It's sponsored by Civil War Photo Collectors Society, and a special thanks goes out to Doug York and Ronn Palm for making this possible. I got interested in Civil War during the Centennial. I was just a little kid, and besides the Civil War Centennial, it also was West Virginia's Centennial. It became a state in June 1863, the only state to become a state as a result of the Civil War. So I read everything I could at a young age. On the Saturday paper had articles on the Civil War, West Virginia related to the Civil War, and by Boyd Stutler, plus a little drawing that went along with the story. So that was very interesting. Then didn't think much about it through school, and got in the Marine Corps and started reading a lot about the Civil War. When I went on drill field, there were two books I carried in my footlocker. One of them was Stonewall in the Valley by Tanner, the 1975 edition, and The Life of Chesty Puller. So then I got stationed at Quantico, and it was a good place to stay in Civil War with all the battlefields around there. And I started focusing just on West Virginia mostly, reading more about statehood. And then whenever I started collecting just West Virginia, focusing on identified West Virginia images. I'm back here in West Virginia now after retiring from the Marine Corps. I belong to Civil War roundtables, Clarksburg and Morgantown, and I'm president of Rich Mountain Battlefield Foundation. If you've never been to Rich Mountain after this craziness ceases, come visit. I think you'll enjoy it. When I got started, I probably didn't have a mentor, but there were a lot of people that helped me along the way. And I hate naming names because I'm going to forget somebody here, but like Ronn Palm, Larry Strayer, Hunter Lesser, Ken Turner, Everitt Bowles, Roger Hunt, and the late Henry Deeks were very helpful in getting me started in collecting Civil War images, West Virginia Civil War images. But everyone I talked to in the collecting community or dealers, I learned something from them, and it's very helpful, and everybody's been very friendly and supportive. Now, my first image that I bought was in the late 80s, and it wasn't just an image, it was a collection of images. This is Israel Field, and it's eighth plate or six plate ambrotype. He's sitting here with his girlfriend at the time. She will become his wife after the war, and she is also his cousin. Rebecca Fields is her name. Israel joined the 3rd West Virginia Infantry in July 1861, right as the war broke out. He is from Preston County. The regiment will be sent over to Cheat Mountain area, and on scout in March 1862, Israel's wounded. Not seriously. He recovers from this wound after a few months. And the 3rd West Virginia Infantry is one of the 3 regiments that will be mounted in June 1863 after the Jones and Bowdoin raid. At that time, the military and the political people in West Virginia decided that the infantry just wasn't doing it. They need cavalry to chase down these guerrillas, and Jones cavalry, McNeil's Rangers, those individuals. So they were mounted, and then in January 64, they became cavalry. So this went from the 3rd West Virginia Infantry to the 6th West Virginia Cavalry. Now, in June 1864, you'd think that this group had been in long enough that they'd know better than to do things without guards around, pickets. But no, the river must have been too inviting, because they were captured in June 1864 swimming. 60 of them were captured, and 100 horses. Very embarrassing. Israel was one of them. He gets sent to Andersonville. He will survive Andersonville, get released in March 1865. He goes home. He's a farmer. He marries his girlfriend, and this is one of the images I got in this collection. And along with it, I got his cousin, Benjamin Field, and the lady beside of him is his girlfriend, and her name is Elizabeth Field. Yes, they're cousins also. He joined at the same time Israel did, was in the same company. The fate was a little different. He was not one of them that was captured, but in June 1864, around Leestown, West Virginia, his horse falls on him, and he will get lockjaw, and he will die of that at the hospital close to Cumberland, Claresville Hospital, which was in the mountains there. Benjamin will he'll be interred at the hospital, and then when the government was reinterring soldiers and putting them in national cemeteries, Benjamin was moved from there just 60 miles or so from his home, and he is moved to Antietam National Cemetery, and he is buried at National Cemetery at Antietam. Same thing, 6-plate ambrotype. With that group, I got another image of Israel. This is early in the war, probably when they were infantry, and he has his musket there. I'm not sure. It looks maybe to be a 1842 musket. I got these 3 ambrotypes with this group. Plus, I got Israel's West Virginia Veterans Medal. The state of West Virginia issued honorable discharge medals to all the soldiers that served with them. And then if they had died of wounds or disease, they received a medal that went to their next of kin. And if they were killed in battle, they received a different type medal that went to their next of kin. I received Israel's discharge and received 3 company officer CDVs. One of them was signed. One of the others have since identified And then the third one is unidentified. He's probably one of two captains that was in that company. And then some other items, family pictures and stuff. Like I said, I got this in late 80s from J. Rainey at Fairfax, as Civil War Show in Fairfax, Virginia. And that's my first image. Now, as far as favorites, I really don't have a favorite image. But let's look at James Giles, the next individual. See the young boy, all 5'4" of him, looks young. He just turned 18. Before the start of the war, he was a farmer. He also, to help the family, which was very poor in Marshall County, in the Panhandle of West Virginia, he would hire himself out, work for other farmers around the area, and the money went to his family. This CDV was taken in Wheeling, and it's signed on the back by James. It says James Giles to Miss M.A. Conley. M.A. Conley. Now you go looking that up in the census, and you find that there's an Eli Conley that lives close to James, or lived close to James, and also that James had worked for. So you look, and here's a girl of age that is his daughter, Mary Ann Conley. So it's a good guess that this is the Conley girl that he sent this image to. Well, James is assigned to the 7th West Virginia Infantry. They'd been on veterans leave. Then they went back to the Petersburg area, and on October 27th, 1864, the 7th is sent out across Hatcher's Run to attack Confederates. James is killed there. He's buried somewhere in an unknown grave. Young man was in from March until October, and then he's gone. He, in his pension records, there is a letter from him to his sister that talks about his time in camp. He really enjoyed it, except he had money stolen, but his friends in the company took up collection and paid back or gave him some money to get by. The Gileses also had another son in the Federal Army. He was in the 12th West Virginia Infantry. His name was Hamilton Giles, and Hamilton dies in the hospital in Gallipolis, October 12th, 1864. So in the month of October 1864, the Giles lost both their sons. Here's George Chandler. This CDV was taken as he was being mustered out. It was taken in Wheeling at Partridge Gallery in May or later, 1865, June 1865. You see he has Custer tie on here, red tie that he had tinted, and the medal that he has on is the drop is an image of Custer. I've seen it referred to as a Custer medal. It comes in different versions. He has an eagle that he suspended the ribbon from, and the drop. Now Chandler, George Chandler, enlisted in the 3-month regiment, 18th Ohio Infantry. Then he moves to the 1st West Virginia Cavalry. He is on the staff of Judson Kilpatrick during the Battle of Gettysburg. At the Battle of Gettysburg, while carrying a dispatch, he is captured. He is taken to Libby Prison, and he will remain a POW until late in the war. And in March 1865, he is paroled and exchanged, and he will rejoin his regiment in time for Appomattox. Here's a surgeon, Robert Haslett, the CDV. The CDV was taken in Baltimore. Nice image of him with his surgeon's sword here. He joins the 2nd West Virginia Infantry in July 1861. Now, I'm just going to refer to it as West Virginia Infantry instead of Virginia Federal. It just makes it a lot easier to say West Virginia, even though the dates are before June 20th, 1863, when West Virginia became a state. Anyway, he will stay in and be stationed in Beverly. He's a surgeon there in charge of the hospital. But in March 1863, he will resign, and he goes back to Wheeling, and he is in charge of a hospital in Wheeling. So he continues doing his part, just not with the regiment. Here's another image of him, CDV, of his wife and Robert. He will stay a prominent doctor in Wheeling after the war. This young man is John Lowry McGee. Image taken in Washington, D.C. He is a lieutenant colonel, is signed on the back. J. Lowry McGee, and Lieutenant Colonel, 3rd Virginia Cavalry. He is a surgeon. He is a dentist in Morgantown when the war breaks out. In July 1861, he forms a company which will become Company A, 1st West Virginia Cavalry. This company is detached from the regiment most of the war. In fact, they go by the nickname Kelly's Lancers in honor of General Benjamin Franklin Kelly, the colonel that was wounded at Philippi. In October 1861, McGee leads his company in a charge against the earthworks at Romney. And he is cited in the after-action report that General Kelly writes, cited what a gallant charge this was. He goes on, and in March 1862, he will resign his commission in the 1st West Virginia Cavalry, and he'll accept a commission as a major in the 3rd West Virginia Cavalry. The 3rd West Virginia Cavalry is pretty much dispersed until late in the war. December 63, they'll be put together, but until this time, Lowry McGee, as he is known, will serve on staffs, various generals, Sigel and Crook. He is promoted lieutenant colonel in September 1863, and in January 65, we find dispatches and returns signed by him, Colonel, 3rd West Virginia Cavalry Commanding. Well, the records that I've found, he doesn't get promoted to colonel until May of 65. So I guess he had his own times table there as far as promotions. Know how that goes. Okay, let's take a look at another guy from the 3rd West Virginia Cavalry. This is his mustering out photo that was taken in Wheeling at Partridge Gallery. Timothy Ronn. Timothy Ronn was from Harrison County, West Virginia. He was a carpenter and a farmer. Real nice red tie there that we can see. And then he also has a Custer medal on, but this one has a scroll holding the ribbon. I have seen these, extremely rare, but I saw one for another soldier in the officer in 3rd West Virginia Cavalry. And then if you look above his medal, he has the captain bars on that they started wearing towards the end of the war. Timothy Ronn was in charge of a couple companies during the Jones and Bowdoin raid, and he around Clarksburg he attacked the rear guard of Jones and causing some havoc. One of the few offensive maneuvers that was made during the Jones and Bowdoin raid by any soldiers, Union soldiers. After the war, Timothy will go back to Harrison County. He has wife and kids there. He will continue in his carpenter work. He will be elected sheriff a couple of times for Harrison County. Staying with the cavalry. This was Edwin Morgan. Edwin Morgan joined the 18th Ohio Infantry, 3-month regiment in 1861, April. And in September 1861, he joins the 2nd West Virginia Cavalry. He brings his horse and trappings with him. He goes in as a 2nd lieutenant, and he is promoted to captain in October 1862, and he is commanding Company K. He will be promoted to major in 1864. 1864, he also gets married. This image I bought from Larry Strayer, and then a few years later, I was offered Edwin's CDV album. It had his name embossed on it with 29 images in it, CDVs, and I have been able to identify 22 of them. It also had his major's commission signed by the governor of West Virginia, a image of his wife, image of his house in Ohio, his hat insignia. You look right here, you've got on his Hardy hat, you've got an insignia for 2nd Cavalry. So this came with it also. So I thought that was pretty interesting to have this piece of memorabilia from from a Civil War soldier. This image of him was taken in Billinghurst, MacArthur, at Billinghurst, MacArthur, Ohio. Nah, that's not very good. Better off back here. There we go. He is a farmer there, and he goes back to farming after the war. This is Benjamin Boswell. He is born in Mason County, Virginia, which becomes West Virginia. This is right along the Ohio River. And he will enlist as a sergeant in the 4th West Virginia Infantry. He will get promoted to second lieutenant, and then gets promoted first lieutenant and to captain in March 1863. Okay, so he is commanding a company in May 1863 at Vicksburg. And on the 19th of May 1863, Grant sent an all-out attack against the fortifications at Vicksburg. Well, Ben Boswell, captain, 4th West Virginia Infantry, is wounded there in the side, and this takes him out for a while. But he does not resign his commission. He goes home, recuperates, and then he rejoins the regiment. He is detailed as inspector, and then whenever the 4th consolidates with the 1st West Virginia Infantry and becomes the 2nd Veteran Volunteer Infantry, he becomes the major. Now, here he is as a major, and he has, you notice, he has a 4 on his jacket there. Many of the 4th West Virginia got a 4, and you see photographs of them with the 4. I've never seen the 4 myself as for sale or anywhere floating around. There's a couple of them still around that I know of. But anyway, after the war, he just kind of moves west. He moves to Illinois, and he moves to Arkansas, moves to California, and he eventually ends up in Oregon, and he will live out his life in Oregon and dies in 1907. This pretty nice image here with the 4. There's no back mark on it, so the photographer is unidentified. This is Daniel Dye Johnson. He's born in Taylor County, West Virginia, and he will go off to Columbia College in Washington, D.C., and he gets a degree in philosophy. it's kind of interesting for someone on in the backwoods of West Virginia to go to Washington D.C. get a degree before the Civil War. Before the war starts, he is a colonel in the militia, 123rd Virginia Militia. He's a colonel. So when the war breaks out, he is mustered in September 1862 as a major in the 14th West Virginia Infantry. He nice image with his hardy hat, his sword. This image was taken in at Wade Gallery in Parkersburg, West Virginia. He commands a brigade at 3rd Winchester, and he is wounded in the arm at 3rd Winchester. He recovers. He goes back to his home on the Ohio River in after the war, 1865. He becomes a lawyer and farmer. He also is elected to the West Virginia House of Delegates, serves the House of Delegates. He is elected to the Senate, becomes president of the Senate. He will die in the Parkersburg area in 1893. Okay, this is a ninth plate tin type of John Franklin Cloc. Here's what you get whenever you go to the cheaper photographers with the half-hearted painting on your gold on your buttons and your cross sabers. He joins the 4th West Virginia Cavalry. This was a unit that was put together in 1863. It was for 6 months only. They did a lot of wagon train duty, patrolling, escorting wagon trains over into Petersburg, Moorfield area. So he serves his time and he gets out. He's living in Noble, Ohio. He gets married. Well, the interesting thing about him is that he is one of the veterans that goes to the 75th anniversary of the Battle of Gettysburg. And I got this with a image of him younger and an image of him older, and also his reunion medal for the anniversary of the Battle of Gettysburg, the 75th reunion. And it's got his name across the bar here. He lives till, at 93, he goes to the reunion. He lives over a year later, and on October 6th, 1939, he dies, and he's buried in Caldwell, Ohio. This is James C. White. He's from Wellsburg, Virginia, West Virginia. Um, he enlists in Company G, 1st Virginia Federal Infantry in May 1861. So one of the first call guys. He enlists as a first lieutenant in Company G. Company G is the Oaks Guards. Was their nickname. Every one of these companies in the 90-day regiment had a nickname. At least the Virginia did. He served that, and then he came back and he was a captain in the 1st West Virginia Infantry, the 3-year regiment. He served there until January 1863 when he resigns. There is a medical problem that he has, an abscess of some sort, which I have not been able to nail down yet. He is operated on, and the surgeon's certificate says 6 months to recover. So that's quite a while. Anyway, he resigns and just resigns in 63. This is signed on the back by him. There's no photographic back mark. It's nice that sees hat there. He's got a number 1 in his hat, one in the middle of his horn. Here's a CDB that was taken in Philadelphia. The man in the middle there is Benjamin Franklin Kelly. He commanded the 1st Virginia Infantry, the 3-month regiment that fought at Philippi, and he was seriously wounded there, shot in the chest. It makes the New York paper that he has been mortally wounded and has since died. This information probably got to them by Lander, Frederick Lander, who was a volunteer aide that went with the expedition to Philippi. And Lander rode back to Grafton right after the battle. So anyway, that's probably how that information got to New York paper. Kelly's sitting here with his 2 sons, 2 of his 4 sons. Right here is William B. Kelly. He was Sergeant Major of the 1st Virginia Infantry, the 3-month regiment, and then he becomes a 1st Lieutenant in the 3-year regiment. Well, Dad tagged him to be his aide-de-camp. So William Kelly was Benjamin Franklin Kelly's aide-de-camp for the whole war. So, and then on the other side is his oldest son, John Goshorn Kelly, and he is Colonel, Lieutenant Colonel of the 7th West Virginia Infantry. He serves as Lieutenant Colonel, most of the time commanding the regiment, because the colonel that is in command that started the 7th is named James, James Evans. James Evans, and he is over 60 years old and field duty is just too rough on him. Well, whenever he resigns, Kelly assumes that he's going to be promoted to full colonel. No, he's not. Joseph Snyder, a political appointee, becomes colonel the 7th. And Joe Snyder did a good job, but John Kelly just couldn't handle it, and he resigned his commission, went back to Philadelphia. This is a real nice image here of the general and his 2 sons. Like I said, it was taken in Philadelphia. Whoa, what happened? Okay. That is all the images that I'm showing tonight. Got a few little questions here that I need to complete. As far as I told you, I focused on West Virginia and the Civil War, and focused on West Virginia images, identified images. A lot of times I'll get an album and only part of them identified, and hopefully I can get the rest of those identified. I've got a bunch I'm working on right now, some from what I believe is 6th West Virginia Infantry, and of course those 7 from the 2nd West Virginia Cavalry that I haven't identified yet. I had relatives fought in the Civil War. I did not know this until just before I started collecting. Had 4 great-great-grandfathers. 3 of them served in the 10th West Virginia Infantry. One of them a 1st sergeant who was wounded at 3rd Battle of Winchester. That wound, even though he lived many years after the war, that would eventually kill him. One that served in the 17th West Virginia Infantry. What I'd like to do after in the future here, I'd like to get some more West Virginia identified images. I'd like to identify the ones that I have that are unknown, and probably write a couple articles for Military Images magazine, along with working Rich Mountain, and we're trying to hire a new executive director right now, so that kind of keeps me busy. I retired, I think I mentioned I retired from the Marine Corps, and then I went to work for Lockheed Martin and retired from them as a IT manager. I want to thank you for tuning in tonight. I'd like to push Military Images magazine. If you do not get this magazine, I highly recommend it, especially if you're an image collector or you just like images. This is a #1 Class A publication. Okay, I think that covers everything. I'm going to sign off.